This is a tube. It is 1.5 millimeters across, about the width of a pencil lead. It is 550 million years old, and there is a hole drilled through the side of it. Something found this animal, something got through its shell, something ate it. This is the oldest known murder in the fossil record, and it happened before the story you are about to hear even begins. For 3 billion years, life on this planet stayed small, soft and simple. No eyes, no teeth, no shells, nobody hunting anybody. Then, in a window of roughly 20 million years, a blink in geological terms, almost every animal body plan alive on Earth today appeared. Armor, claws, legs, jaws, eyes, your spine. Nobody has fully explained why. This is the strangest 20 million years in the history of life. This is before us, the history of the world before anyone was here to see it. The date is 538.8 million years ago. The continents are bare rock. Everything that matters is happening underwater. And hold on to that drilled tube. We are going to come back to it, and when we do, it is going to change what you think this whole event was. To understand what changed, you have to understand how strange the world was before it. Picture the seafloor of the late Precambrian. It is not empty, but it is quiet. The bottom is covered in thick mats of bacteria. Slick, rubbery sheets like wet felt laid over sand. Some of them run for meters. Living on those mats are the ediacarans. Fronds, discs, quilted ribbons, some of them 1 meter long. Many of them look less like animals than like things you would find growing on a tree. Almost none of them can move quickly. Almost none of them have a mouth. There is no chase here. Nothing flees, nothing pursues. Energy moves through this ecosystem slowly, absorbed and diffused rather than caught and torn. Scientists have spent 160 years trying to explain what ended that world. The explanations fall into two camps. One says the environment changed and life responded. The other says life changed and everything else followed. Before I show you any evidence, I want your instinct. Environment or ecology? Put it in the comments now before this video moves you. I will tell you which way I think the evidence leans by the end. Start with the environment, because that is where the argument started. Charles Darwin knew about this problem. In On the Origin of Species, he admitted that the sudden appearance of complex animals in the oldest fossil-bearing rocks was, by his own judgment, a serious difficulty for his theory. He could not explain it. He suspected the record was incomplete and he left it there. For most of the next century, the leading answer was oxygen. The logic is physical and it is hard to argue with. A predator is expensive. Chasing something costs energy. Muscle costs energy. A nervous system fast enough to aim costs energy. Building a shell and then dragging it around costs energy. All of that runs on aerobic metabolism, and aerobic metabolism runs on oxygen. For most of Earth's history, there was not enough. Then across the Ediacaran period, that changed. Modeling published in Nature Communications suggests atmospheric oxygen rose by roughly 50% during the Ediacaran, reaching something like a quarter of present-day levels. That lands squarely inside the range that large, mobile, predatory animals are estimated to need. And there is a modern test for this. In today's oceans, there are regions called oxygen minimum zones, where dissolved oxygen falls to something like Precambrian levels. A team led by Eric Sperling went and looked at what lives there. What they found was not simply less life. It was a specific kind of absence. In low oxygen water, the proportion of carnivores in the community collapses. The food webs go flat, raise the oxygen, and predators appear, and the web builds upward. That is a real answer. It is measurable, it is testable in the present day, and it fits. You can see the consequences written into the rock. The Cambrian boundary itself is not defined by a bone or a shell or a skeleton. It is defined by a burrow. A branching trace called Treptichnus pedum cut into sediment at Fortune Head in Newfoundland. That single trace is the official line between the Precambrian and everything after. Think about what a burrow means. It means an animal with muscles and a front end and a direction. It means something with a reason to go down into the mud. It means something worth hiding from. So there it is, the first answer. The air and the water changed, a threshold was crossed, and the biology that had been impossible for 3 billion years suddenly became possible. But there is a problem with that story. Oxygen tells you when the door opened. It does not tell you what walked through it. No rise in dissolved oxygen builds a compound eye. No threshold concentration invents a jointed leg or a spine or a set of grasping claws. Oxygen is a permit, it is not an architect. And there is a worse problem. The permit was issued early, and then nothing happened for a very long time. The Ediacaran Ocean had been ventilating on and off for tens of millions of years before anything exploded. In 2013, Sperling's team put the mismatch plainly. Environmental triggers explain the timing of this event but not its pattern, and ecological triggers explain the pattern but not the timing. So if oxygen opened the door, what came through it? In 1909, a paleontologist named Charles Doolittle Walcott was working a ridge in the Canadian Rockies when he split open a slab of grey mudstone. Inside was something that should not have survived. A soft-bodied animal, 500 million years old, flattened into the rock like a pressed flower, with its gut and its limbs still legible. He had found the Burgess Shale. Over the following years, he collected tens of thousands of specimens, and for most of a century that site defined what we thought the Cambrian was. Then, in 1984, a second window opened. In Yunnan province in southern China, geologists found the Chengjiang beds, older than the Burgess Shale by around 9 million years and preserved just as finely. More than 300 species have been described from it. Between those two windows, we can stand on the Cambrian seafloor and look around. And the thing that jumps out is not the number of species, it is the equipment. Consider Anomalocaris. It is the largest predator in this world. Some specimens approach 0.5 meter, which in an ocean of thumb-sized animals makes it a monster. It has a segmented body, swimming flaps down both sides, a circular mouth, and two grasping appendages at the front, hooked, spined, and built for holding something that does not want to be held. And on stalks, projecting from its head, it has eyes, not light-sensitive patches. Compound eyes with tens of thousands of individual lenses, the kind that resolve an image, the kind that can pick a specific moving object out of open water and track it. That is the innovation, not the claws. The claws are a consequence. For 3 billion years, every organism on this planet experienced the world by contact and chemistry. Touch, taste, gradients of dissolved molecules. In that world, a predator can only find you by bumping into you, and you can only escape by luck. Vision breaks that. Vision means a hunter can detect prey at a distance, identify it, and commit to a pursuit before contact. And the moment that is true for one animal, every other animal in the ocean is holding a losing hand. The zoologist Andrew Parker built an entire hypothesis on this, published in 2003 under the title In the Blink of an Eye. He called it the light switch. His argument is that the first image-forming eye was the trigger. That vision turned a slow, blind, passive world into a fast, visual and lethal one, and that everything we call the Cambrian explosion is the arms race that followed. And the arms race explains the shopping list. Armor, because you can be seen. Spines, because you can be grabbed. Speed, because you can be chased. Burrowing, because the one place a visual predator cannot follow you is down. Camouflage, because being seen is now the thing that kills you. Every one of those is a solution to the same problem. And every solution creates a new problem for the animal on the other side. That is the second answer, and it is the one that explains the shape of the event. Oxygen opened the door. Predation did the building. The Cambrian was not a burst of creativity, it was a war. But there is a problem with that story too. In fact, there is a problem with the entire fossil record it rests on. Look at what fossilizes. Shells fossilize, spines fossilize, armor plates fossilize, teeth fossilize. Now look at what does not. A worm does not. A jellyfish does not. A soft, blind, unarmored animal that dies on a muddy seafloor leaves, in almost every case, absolutely nothing behind. So consider what an arms race would look like in the rock if one were happening. Animals start making hard parts preserve. And a fossil record that has been nearly blank for 3 billion years suddenly fills up, which raises a genuinely uncomfortable question. Are we watching animals appear? Or are we only watching the moment animals became capable of leaving a trace? Put more bluntly, did the Cambrian explosion actually happen at all? There is a way to test this that does not involve rocks at all. Every living animal carries a record of its own ancestry inside its genome. Mutations accumulate over time at rates that can be estimated, so if you compare the genomes of two living groups, you can work backwards and estimate how long ago their lineages separated. This is a molecular clock, and it is completely independent of whether anything fossilized. Point that clock at the animal kingdom, and you get an answer that does not match the rocks. In 2011, a team led by Douglas Irwin at the Smithsonian published a synthesis in Science with a title that says everything: The Cambrian Conundrum. Their reconstruction placed the last common ancestor of all living animals at around 800 million years ago. Not 538, 800. And the developmental toolkit, the genetic machinery for building segmented, symmetrical, complex bodies, was, on their account, largely assembled during the Cryogenian, between 850 and 635 million years ago. That is the era we covered last time, the era of global glaciation, which means that while this planet was frozen from pole to pole, the instruction set for every animal that would ever live was already being written. So the clocks and the rocks disagree, and they disagree by hundreds of millions of years. Paleontologists have a name for this fight. They call it rocks versus clocks. Neither side is obviously wrong. Molecular clocks have real weaknesses. Mutation rates are not constant. Confidence intervals are wide. Different methods produce different answers. But the fossil record has a weakness that is worse, and it is not a technical one. It is structural. The fossil record can only ever show you what left a fossil. Here, absence of evidence is genuinely not evidence of absence. The light switch has taken damage too. The paleontologist Simon Conway Morris, who spent much of his career on the Burgess Shale, reviewed Parker's book and was blunt about it. His objection was that vision cannot be isolated as the cause, because nervous systems, brains and skeletons all had to arrive as well. Picking one and calling it the trigger, he argued, confuses cause with effect. The timing is contested too. The earliest eyes with lenses are dated to around 521 million years ago. That is after the explosion was already underway. And then, in 2019, the clock itself moved. A team dating volcanic ash layers in Namibia with uranium-lead zircon methods pinned the base of the Cambrian to 538.8 million years ago. About 2 million years later than the figure that had been in every textbook. 2 million years sounds like a rounding error. It is not. It compresses the window. It makes a fast event faster, and a fast event is harder to explain by slow environmental change. Which brings us back to that tube. It is called Claudina. It is the earliest animal known to have built itself a mineralized skeleton, and it lived in the last stretch of the Ediacaran, before the Cambrian, before the trilobites, before any of this. In 1992, Stefan Bengtson and Zhao Yue examined more than 500 Claudina tubes from Shanxi province in China. Just under 3% of them had round holes bored clean through the wall, between 40 and 400 micrometers across. And the size of the hole tracked the size of the tube, which is what you see when a predator is choosing its prey by size. Armor. And something that could get through armor. Before the explosion, the war had already started. We just could not see it yet. So where does this land? In 2019, Rachel Wood and colleagues published an analysis in Nature, Ecology and Evolution that refused to pick a side. They argued that the Cambrian explosion is real, but that it sits nested inside a much longer record, one reaching back to at least 571 million years ago in the late Ediacaran. The event has a long fuse. That is the honest answer, and it dissolves the argument rather than winning it. The genes were old. The bodies had been assembling for 100 million years or more, quietly, in animals too soft to leave a trace. What changed in the Cambrian was not the invention of animals. It was the moment the ecology went vertical. When eating each other became the dominant way to make a living. When hard parts stopped being an advantage and started being mandatory. And when, for the first time, life began writing itself into stone. The explosion was real, it just was not the beginning. It was the moment the fuse reached the powder. There is one more fossil worth showing you. In the Chengjiang beds, among all the armor and the claws, there is a creature about the length of your thumbnail. It is called Miloconmingia. It was described in 1999. It is roughly 518 million years old. It has no jaw, no bone, no armor at all. What it has is a stiffening rod running the length of its body, and blocks of muscle arranged in chevrons along either side of it. That is a notochord. That is a spine in first draft. It is the oldest thing yet found that you could reasonably call a vertebrate, and as far as we can tell, it is your ancestor. Which leads to the strangest fact about this whole event. Almost every basic body plan alive on Earth today, every fundamental way of being an animal, was invented inside that 20 million year window. In the 500 million years since, evolution has produced staggering variation on those designs. Birds, whales, beetles, us, but it has not produced a genuinely new one. You are not a modern design. You are a Cambrian design, running for 518 million years without a rewrite. If this is the kind of thing you want more of, slow, careful, and honest about what we do not know, the like button genuinely helps this channel find people like you. And the question I asked you at the start, environment or ecology? The evidence, as I read it, says neither one wins. Oxygen set the stage. Predation wrote the script. Tell me in the comments if you see it differently, because everything you have just watched happened underwater. Above the waterline, the continents were still bare rock, sterile, silent. Nothing had ever lived there. That was about to change. That is where we go next.